Take a quick pause. Did you know that over 90% of you watching haven't hit the subscribe button yet? If you're enjoying this video, take a second to subscribe and hit the like button. It helps us bring you more gripping stories every day. Also, we'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments so we can see how far our stories are reaching. Your support really keeps us going. Now, let's jump back into the video. I met her at a wedding, my cousin's actually. The kind of event you only attend out of obligation, expecting cheap wine, forced conversations, and awkward dancing. But that night turned into something else entirely. Something unforgettable. She stood out in the crowd like a soft melody in a loud room. A long, emerald dress hugged her figure, her hair loose in gentle waves. I noticed her when she laughed. Not a polite giggle, but a full, free sound that tugged something in me. We met at the bar. She was sipping a lemonade, stirring it absent-mindedly. "Lemonade at a wedding?" I said, leaning in just enough to be heard over the music. She glanced at me sideways, smiling. I like to remember the night. That smile. I swear it could have stopped time. We ended up talking for hours. Her name was Claire. She was a graphic designer who hated client meetings, loved thunderstorms, and had an embarrassing obsession with crossword puzzles. I was hooked. We danced. We laughed. We even sneaked out during the bouquet toss just to walk around the venue garden, talking about everything and nothing. When I dropped her off that night, I sat in the car after she walked away, trying to understand what just happened. A week later, I asked her out. A month later, we were inseparable. Everything with Claire was effortless. We synced in ways I didn't even think were possible. Sunday morning pancakes became our ritual. She would hum while cooking. I'd sit at the kitchen counter just watching her. We got married after a year. People said it was fast, impulsive even. But when you know, right? Our wedding was small but beautiful. She wore the same emerald color she had the night we met. I remember my hands trembling as I held hers at the altar. She whispered, "It's just us now." And for a while it really was. We built a life. We shared dreams. We renovated a small house on the edge of town with a backyard big enough for the dog we kept saying we'd adopt. Even our fights were rare, usually over silly things, like me leaving socks around the house or her buying too many scented candles. I loved her deeply. Blindly, maybe. The first time I noticed something was off, it was subtle. Claire started staying late at work. At first it made sense. Tight deadlines, demanding clients. She always looked exhausted when she got home, and I didn't want to add to her stress. I made her tea, ran her baths, and tried to be patient. But the small things began piling up. She stopped humming while cooking, stopped making pancakes on Sundays. She began sleeping with her phone under her pillow, flinching when I reached for it to set the alarm. Once I found her crying in the bathroom. She said it was nothing, just a bad day. But when I tried to hold her, she pulled away. "I'm just tired," she said. I wanted to believe that. I tried to believe that. But doubt is a seed that doesn't die quietly. It spreads, slowly, steadily, until it wraps around everything. I started watching. Not in a possessive way, at least that's what I told myself. I just needed to understand what was happening. Her patterns changed. She started dressing up more for work. New perfume. She'd smile at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. One night, she said she was heading out for a late client meeting. I offered to drive her. She declined. "I'll be fine. It's just at the coffee shop downtown." Something in her tone didn't sit right. So I waited 10 minutes after she left, then followed. It wasn't paranoia, it was instinct. She wasn't at the coffee shop. My chest tightened as I drove around, scanning the streets. I almost gave up until I saw her car parked outside a hotel. Not a fancy one, not the kind for business meetings, just a dimly lit place with tinted windows. I sat across the street, gripping the steering wheel, my mind spinning. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe she was meeting someone for work who didn't want distractions. But I knew. Deep down, I knew. She came out an hour later. She wasn't alone. And when I saw who was with her, I felt something inside me break. It was Adam. My best friend since college, the guy who was my best man, the one who helped me pick out Claire's engagement ring. They didn't touch, not in public, but they didn't need to. The way they walked, the way they looked at each other, it said everything. I drove home, numb. My hands felt foreign on the wheel. I kept replaying our wedding vows in my head, her smile that day, the way she looked at me like I was her whole world. Was it all a lie? I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. I sat on the couch for hours, the silence in the house heavier than anything I'd ever felt. The next morning, Claire acted like nothing happened. She kissed me on the cheek, asked if I wanted eggs. I stared at her, trying to reconcile the woman in front of me with the one who left a hotel room with my best friend the night before. I'm not hungry, I said, my voice barely steady. Days passed. I couldn't sleep. I started checking her messages when she was in the shower. I hated myself for it, but I had to know more. The texts were there, coded but obvious. Last night was amazing. Miss you already. Same time next week? Every word was a knife. I printed out the texts, took screenshots, gathered proof. Not because I wanted revenge, at least not at first, but because I needed her to admit it. I needed to hear it from her mouth. I planned the confrontation carefully. A Friday evening, I made dinner, lit candles, acted normal. She smiled across the table like everything was fine. Halfway through dessert, I pulled out the folder. What's that? She asked, confused. Read it, I said quietly. She opened it, glanced at the papers, and froze. Her face drained of color. Where were you last Tuesday night? I asked, still calm, though my heart felt like it was being crushed. Her hands trembled. It's not what you think. Don't lie to me, Claire, please, not now. She looked up, eyes glossy. I didn't mean for this to happen. It just happened. With him? With Adam? She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I was lonely. We weren't connecting. I tried to talk to you, but you were always working or tired or distracted. And Adam, he was there. He listened. I stood up, knocking over my chair. So you slept with him? Because I didn't ask you enough about your day? It wasn't like that. Don't you dare justify this. I walked out of the house that night. Didn't take anything, just my keys. I drove until the sun rose. My world had shifted. The woman I had loved, trusted, married, she'd betrayed me in the worst way. And the man I thought was family, he was worse. He knew what she meant to me, and he still did it. But this isn't the end of the story. This isn't where I crumble and disappear. There's more. Because I wasn't going to let them walk away without consequences. I needed truth. I needed justice. And I needed to heal, even if it meant burning bridges to do it. The days after I left the house felt like waking up in someone else's life. I stayed at a motel on the edge of town. Cheap walls, humming air conditioner, and a view of a parking lot filled with tired cars. It was nothing like home, but it was quiet. And right then, silence was all I could stand. I turned off my phone. I didn't want to hear her voice. I didn't want to see her name light up the screen. I needed time to think, to breathe, to understand how the person I loved more than anything could have looked me in the eyes while lying every single day. On the third night, I sat on the motel bed with the printed messages still in my hand. I read them again, not because I needed to. Every word was burned into me by now. But because part of me kept hoping I'd find something different. Some excuse that would make it all less real. But it was all there. Clear as day. She told him she loved him. He told her he wished she had married him instead. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. The room felt too small, too dark. I opened the door and stepped outside, letting the cold air sting my face. I stood under the flickering light by the stairs and just let it all settle. The anger, the disbelief, the unbearable sadness. How do you grieve someone who's still alive? How do you look back at all the good memories and wonder if any of them were ever real? I didn't have answers, but I knew one thing. I couldn't keep living in the shadows of their lies. I had to confront Adam. I had to hear his voice crack, see his face when he realized I knew everything. Because betrayal from a lover hurts, but from a friend? That's a different kind of wound. I called him from a new number. He answered after 2 rings. Hello? Adam. Silence. Who is this? You know who it is. He didn't speak for a few seconds. Then, cautiously, Look, man, I can explain. Number, you can't. You don't get to explain. But you are going to look me in the eye. I didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't mean to get caught. Meet me. Today, 6 o'clock, by the river dock. He agreed. The sun was just beginning to set when I got there. The sky was streaked in orange and purple, the water calm and deceptive. I waited by the bench where we used to go fishing in college. It felt poetic in a twisted way that this would be the place. He showed up. Same old Adam. Except this time I saw everything differently. His familiar face now looked like a mask someone else had been wearing. He looked nervous. I wasn't sure you'd actually come, he said. I kept my arms crossed, jaw tight. Why her? He shifted his weight. It started with us just talking. You and we hadn't hung out in a while. Claire said she felt alone. I don't know. One thing led to another. That's not how that works, I snapped. People don't just trip and fall into hotel beds. I swear I didn't plan it. It just happened. We were both in a bad place. No, I said, coldly. I was in a bad place. She was supposed to be the one I leaned on. And you? You were supposed to have my back. I didn't mean for it to get serious, he said. But it did. She said she might leave you. I stared at him, stunned. She said that? He nodded. But she wasn't sure. She kept saying she didn't want to hurt you. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. She didn't want to hurt me? Tell me, Adam, did either of you ever stop to think about what it would feel like? Seeing the two people I trusted most sneaking behind my back? His shoulders sagged. I'm sorry, I really am. I don't care, I said quietly. Sorry doesn't erase anything. He stood there, not knowing what to say, and I realized he had nothing. No excuses, no remorse that could undo what was done. I turned and walked away. I didn't punch him. I didn't scream. The silence said more than any words could. That night, I went back home. Claire was there. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were swollen, her voice soft. I thought you'd never come back, she said. I didn't come back for you, I replied. I came to pack. She followed me to the bedroom, watching as I pulled clothes from the closet and shoved them into a bag. I ended it, she said, with Adam, the day after you left. I couldn't do it anymore. I didn't respond. She stepped closer. I know you hate me. I hate myself too. I zipped the bag. Good. I don't want to lose you, she whispered. You already did. I walked past her. I didn't look back. For the next few weeks, I crashed at a friend's place. I went back to work. I kept my head down. People asked about Claire. I told them it was private. I wasn't ready to explain how everything I believed in had come undone. She called, texted, wrote long emails about regret, love, second chances. I deleted them all. Then she sent a letter. It was handwritten, full of memories. How she missed the way I used to laugh during movies. How I never forgot her coffee order. How she made the biggest mistake of her life. She said she would wait, as long as it took. She said she didn't expect forgiveness, but hoped for it. I didn't respond. Closure, they say, comes in stages. It doesn't arrive all at once like a gift at the door. One afternoon, I stood in front of our old house. Claire had moved out. A for sale sign was in the yard. The home we built, painted, fought, and loved in. It felt like a shell now. I walked through the empty rooms, running my fingers along the walls. I found an old photo of us on a shelf. We were at the beach, laughing, sunburned. Back when everything felt so certain. I put it back face down. That night, I wrote her a letter. Not to open old wounds, but to close them. I told her I believed in us once, that I gave her everything I had, that trust, once broken, doesn't always come back. I told her I wished her peace. I didn't wish her pain, but I needed to move on. For real. And I was going to. But before I could, I needed to take one more step. Justice. Because what they did wasn't just betrayal, it was deception. And it had legal consequences. Claire and I had started a small business together. Our finances were intertwined. Turns out she'd used some of our shared funds to cover her rendezvous with Adam. Dinners, hotels, even gifts. I didn't know until I looked through the credit card statements. At first I thought the charges were just part of her work expenses, but the pattern was clear. I contacted a lawyer. I wasn't going to press charges, but I wanted everything documented. If she tried to come after anything in the divorce, I'd be ready. When I confronted her through legal channels, she didn't fight. She signed over her share of the business. Quietly. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was fear. I didn't care. What mattered was that I was free. Free from the lies. Free from the shadows. Free to start over. I wasn't the same man I was at that wedding. That version of me was gone. But maybe that was okay. Because what came next, who I would become, was finally up to me. The divorce papers were signed 2 weeks earlier. No court drama, no drawn-out fights. Just quiet, tired signatures from two people who once thought they'd grow old together. I remember staring at the ink on that final page, wondering how something that once felt like destiny could now end in silence and paperwork. I moved into a small apartment downtown. It was nothing special. 1 bedroom, a narrow kitchen, creaky wooden floors, but it was mine. My name on the lease, my own space. Every dish I washed, every blanket I folded, every picture I hung on the wall was a reminder that I was starting over. Some nights the silence was loud, deafening even. I'd lie in bed and stare at the ceiling, replaying old conversations like they were scenes from a movie. Her laughter, the warmth in her eyes when she used to look at me. The night we danced barefoot in the kitchen after our first anniversary dinner. The night I found out it was all a lie. I wrestled with those memories. I didn't want to hate her, but I couldn't forget what she did either. The betrayal had cut so deep it sometimes felt like it had changed my very wiring. Like trust had become something foreign, something I couldn't offer easily anymore. One evening I ran into Adam. It was unexpected, at a gas station just off the highway. I was filling up and I heard his voice behind me. "Hey!" I turned around slowly. There he was, the man who used to be like a brother, now just a stranger with a familiar face. I didn't say anything at first. "I heard about the divorce," he said. "I figured it was finalized." I nodded once, clipped. "Yeah." He hesitated, then added, "I moved to the east side. Trying to start over, too." I didn't care where he lived, or what he was trying to start. "Did she end up with you?" I asked. Not because I wanted to know, but because a small part of me wanted to hear the truth one last time. He shook his head. "We don't talk anymore. Haven't since you found out." I watched him closely. There was something different about him. He looked older. Not physically, but emotionally. Worn down. "I lost a lot, too," he added, his voice quieter. "Not as much as I did." He nodded slowly. "You're right." That was it. No apology, no excuses this time. Just truth. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the weight shift. Not disappear, but shift. Like maybe I didn't need to carry all of it anymore. I got back into my car and drove off. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. In the months that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. Not just the pieces that were broken, but the parts of me I'd lost along the way. I started going to therapy. At first I hated it. I didn't want to talk. But slowly I realized how much I needed to unpack the pain, the guilt, the anger. The therapist Maya asked me one day, "Do you still love her?" I thought about it. Not just for a moment, but really thought. "No," I said, "but I loved who I believed she was." "That's fair," Maya replied. "Sometimes we fall for the version of someone we build in our minds. It doesn't make the love any less real." That stuck with me. I didn't erase Claire from my past. I didn't pretend it never happened. What we had, even if it ended in betrayal, still shaped me. But I also didn't let it define me anymore. I poured myself into work, took on new clients, expanded the business. I even hired a small team. People who saw potential in me when I barely saw it in myself. For the first time in years, I felt proud again. Not just successful, proud. One rainy afternoon, I visited the river dock again, the place where I confronted Adam, the place where things truly ended. The bench was still there. Wet with rain, the wood darker than I remembered. I sat down and watched the water move quietly, rippling with the wind. I closed my eyes and let it all wash over me. The anger, the love, the betrayal, the healing. When I opened them again, I felt lighter. The closure I thought would come through confrontation or revenge didn't come that way. It came in the quiet moments, the slow acceptance, the forgiveness I gave myself. One night, I was invited to another wedding. I almost didn't go. Too many memories. But something in me, maybe curiosity, maybe courage, nudged me forward. It was nothing like the first wedding where I met Claire. This one was small, intimate, held in a backyard strung with fairy lights and laughter. I stood by the punch bowl watching people dance, smiling at the easy joy in the air. And then I met someone. Not in the same movie magic way. There were no fireworks or slow motion glances, just a simple hello, a conversation about music, a shared laugh. Her name was Julia. She was kind, thoughtful, easy to talk to. We didn't exchange promises that night, no numbers, just a moment. But it was a start. Over the weeks that followed, we ran into each other again. Same circles, same events. The universe, it seemed, wasn't done writing for me. We took it slow. I was honest about my past. She didn't flinch. She didn't run. She listened. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something stir that I thought I'd buried. A flicker of hope. One evening, as we walked through the park, Julia turned to me and asked, "Do you ever regret what happened?" I thought for a moment. "I regret the pain," I said, "but not the lesson. It made me see things clearly about love, about trust, about myself." She smiled gently. "That's growth." I nodded because it was. Healing doesn't come in straight lines. Some days are better than others. Some nights I still wake up remembering the pain. But the difference now is I know I can get through it. I already have. I'm not who I used to be, and maybe that's the point. Sometimes we have to break to rebuild, to see who we are when everything familiar falls away. And when we do, we might just find something stronger waiting in the ruins. Not a perfect love, not a flawless life, but something real, something honest. And that I've learned is more than enough.